On April 21st, 2021, Mark and Jalise Middleton were arrested for January 6th for being there at this rally/protest. And you're about to hear their story. A federal jury convicted Mark, 55, and Jalise, 54, of Forestburg, Texas, of 2 counts of assaulting, resisting, and impeding certain officers, civil disorder, and obstruction of an official proceeding. You're about to hear their side of the story, so you guys stay tuned.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, and you're going to want to stay around for this one. So we have an interview with the Middletons. They were there on January 6th, and now they are looking at possible time in jail. And so we're going to take a look at their case, their story. You're going to hear from them firsthand. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Mark and Jalise Middleton, where are you guys calling from this morning?
So we are, if you know where Gainesville, Texas is, just south of the Oklahoma border. So we are about 30 miles southwest of there, out in the country.
Okay. And native Texans?
Absolutely.
All right. Texas pride. I grew up in Texas, so I feel you. Never thought I would leave, but God had other plans. I find myself in Oklahoma, but just north of you on the border there. But love Texas, and I know there's a certain mentality that comes with Texans. There's a lot of pride.
That is very true. But I'm not gonna be dishonest. So I'm gonna tell you, we come up there for a couple conservative events, and y'all knocked my socks off. I told y'all that you better start building a border wall between Texas and Oklahoma, because Texas is getting more and more liberal every day.
Might see an invasion of Texas and Oklahoma, huh? No, we're proud of our state here. Definitely a conservative state for the most part, and we big Trump supporters for the most part. We're known as we have the label as the most conservative state in the union because the last 2 elections, every county voted for Trump, and I don't necessarily claim that label full bore because I was actually in the Oklahoma State Senate where I got this peek behind the curtain and see that we're not entirely conservative. We have a lot of work to be done here in the state, but for the most part, we're Trump supporters here, most of us, and we sympathize, with those that showed up on January 6th, really to celebrate our freedom and to demand that our freedom is protected. I want to just jump right into your story. Let's just talk about leading up to January 6th. What motivated you guys to go there in the first place?
So, around December 20th, 2020, I was sitting on the couch and so I guess I should back it up a little more. Back in October of that year, I started feeling a calling to go to D.C. to those rallies. And I really didn't want to go. I loved my job and I loved what I was doing. But I went to my boss and I told her, I just want you to know I'm feeling led to go to this. And it's not going to be good because as a marketer for my company, I'm like, we have to ride the fence, not show any political bend, stay quiet in that stuff. So I gave her a heads up. And she goes, no, don't tell me that. I said, I don't think it'll be good, but I'm really feeling called. And she said, well, pray about it. I don't want to hear that, So anyway, in December, I was sitting on the couch out of nowhere. I'd long forgot about that day. And it welled up in me like a wellspring. I felt like I needed to start crying out of nowhere. And I realized we needed to go. So I turned to Mark, and I'm really expecting him to be my sound mind and go, are you crazy? You know? And I turned to him and I go, Mark, I think we're going to have to go to DC. And he turned back immediately and said, I think you're right.
Wow.
And we knew we're being called to it. So we booked our flight right then and there.
Mark, what was it that made you so readily agree to that?
You know, I'd been feeling the same pull that we needed to be there. I share her sentiments. We'd been to D.C. before. We'd seen all the sites that you would want to go to D.C. for, and had no desire to ever go back there again. But
we were less than impressed.
The monuments are really neat. Beyond that, you know, it's a cesspool.
You know, we're very spiritual beings, and we could just feel the, you know,
the demonic presence in that city is mind-boggling.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I just felt the pull too. And when she voiced it out loud, it's like, well, Lord, I guess we're going to DC. So we immediately, I mean, this is what, a week to 2 weeks before J6, and we booked our flights, booked a hotel, very reasonable priced on everything. That was kind of our threshold. You know, if we could find hotels at a reasonable price, and we did. We stayed at the
Fourth Washington,
the George Washington, which is like less than a quarter of a mile from the Capitol. Everything was worked out perfectly.
And I can't help but wonder, after all of this, if even that wasn't part of the setup. Because everything was so affordable, the flights, the hotels, everything. But I mean, that's just a side note in my head. But
Yeah.
we did know it was dangerous. I felt the calling that it was going to be deadly, actually. We wrote out our will right before we left to our children and explained to them that we feel called to this. We know it's dangerous. We don't know if we'll live through it, but we have to go. And so they were understanding, not really liking it, but anyway, we knew it would be dangerous. So for all the people that are like, you know, oh, you know, I wanted to go, but I knew it was a setup. We didn't know it was a setup. We thought it was dangerous because of Antifa. But I will quickly tell anybody, God don't let you off the hook, so to speak, on a mission he calls you to just because it's dangerous. So we still stand by our calling to go that day. Now, whether we did it right or not, I don't know. I'll have to ask you when I get there, but...
Right. Well, what was the atmosphere like when you got there? Were you surrounded by like-minded people? I mean, what was it like? I mean, you talked about being there before and felt the heavy demonic presence. What was it like on this trip?
You know, because we stayed close to the Capitol, that morning as we walked past the Capitol, you could definitely feel the heavy presence. It's more so the Capitol and the federal buildings is where the demonic presence is, especially around that Capitol. But we walked past it. You know, it seemed like every step we took, we were crossing a Christian that was praying or something. The Trump rally, we didn't get into the ellipse. We were kind of much closer to the Washington Monument, and it was just a sea of people singing patriotic songs, hymns, you know.
Very joyous.
Singing the national anthem, all kinds of stuff. It was an amazing, undescribably patriotic and Christ-filled day.
Wow.
Is what we experienced that morning.
You're in the middle of that sea of patriots singing hymns. Did your mind start shifting that, hey, I thought this was going to be more volatile, more dangerous, maybe not so much?
You know,
mentality, what was your thinking at that point?
Not at the Trump rally. No, I mean, we were in the middle of the crowd more or less. You know, hundreds of thousands of people around us, probably well over 1 million people, if not more.
The danger was that we felt was going to and from the rally and the events the night before and things like that.
Yeah.
That's when we had been warned that Antifa were their, least behaved. And that's when we would want to be concerned for our safety.
Okay.
But as far as being in the crowd, absolutely safe. I mean, had no,
Yeah.
Other than the fear of being trampled, I'm short. I'm short and disabled. I was a little worried about, I hope nothing scares this crowd because I don't want to be trampled. So
When did things shift? I mean, so you're at the Trump rally. Things were, I mean, like a little bit of heaven on earth, especially for a Trump supporter, for a true patriot, a believer. And then when did things shift?
When we got back to the Capitol grounds, the little reflection pond there on the west side of the Capitol, and I say little, it's big, but it's not as big as the Forrest Gump reflection pond that most people think of. So we got there, and all of the barricades and stuff were gone that were there that morning. The day before, they were there. But when we got there at around 1:30, 1:45-ish, all of those barricades were absolutely gone. We didn't see any, we didn't cross any or anything like that. So, nothing really flagged us. We walked up the west lawn. Nothing flagged us other than in one area to the north of the west side of the Capitol, the police were launching flashbang grenades out there. So they had... for those that have been in the military or love weapons, M203 grenade launchers. And they were loading them up with flashbangs and just launching them out into the crowd over in the northwest area. And honestly, we didn't pay much mind to that because we just figured there was some sort of ruckus over there. Some people got ignorant, or maybe Antifa was over there causing problems. They were trying to break it up. As we walked up the lawn, we got to the Capitol steps on the west side. And we were close to the media stand, that big media review tower that you see when you see pictures of that day. The only thing that really flagged us is some people had been tear gassed or pepper sprayed. But again, it was so isolated, it really didn't flag you that this, something was awry.
you just kind of wondered what they did.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like, well, you did something wrong.
You obviously got up there and got ignorant. The cops had tear gas you or whatever. Really didn't pay much mind to it. We went all the way up to the police line, to the barricade there, up on the Capitol steps. I'm actually up on the patio. I mean, we were much closer to the Capitol than we actually realized that day because there was just so many people.
People often, ask, you should have known better to be that close or whatever. But, first off, they set the barricades way up on the patio instead of like at the bottom of the steps or something where it would be a clear signal, don't go onto the steps. They set it way, way up there. And even though we were up at the front, you don't realize how far you were walking because there were so many people. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't tell your placement, really. In fact, we really didn't until our discovery. And when we looked at it, we're like, dang, look how close we were.
And there was just so much noise. People chanting, Trump, 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 stop the steal. USA, singing the national anthem, just all kinds of stuff. There's just so much noise. I mean, it was really disorienting for the most part. But we went all the way up to the police line, and it was all Capitol Police at that time, at least where we were at. And we exchanged some niceties with the police there, thanked them for what they're doing and that sort of thing. And at some point, Jalise looked at me and she goes, "I've never been to a protest. What do we do?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I've never been either." So we decided to huddle in prayer. The best thing we could do, the best way we could protest was to pray for our nation.
And let me just stop right there. So was that your intent, was to go to a protest? I mean, I talked to some and they describe it as a rally. And so, did it start as a rally and turn into a protest, or were you going initially to go to a protest?
Well, both really, I guess, because, the Trump rally, It could be also termed a protest, and as well as the 5 permitted events that were around the Capitol that day were also protests / rallies. They had a lot of speakers and all that sort of stuff. And we even have the actual protest paperwork that the Capitol Police approved weeks in advance. Unbeknownst to everybody, they canceled those at about 1 p.m. that day. Of course, they didn't let anyone know. But anyway, yeah, I mean,
I think as we're, past all of this part of it, I'm looking back, hindsight's always 2020. I think the intent was to start as a rally, listening to the speakers. I know we were looking forward to the speakers that were going to be at the Capitol, because we had been involved in MAGA Drag the Interstate, and one of the leaders of that was going to be a speaker. We wanted to see him. That's why we headed to the Capitol. But I think along the way, you get there, you're seeing people protest, they have signs, and you have a problem with what occurred too. So you're like, we're protesting while waiting on speakers.
Right. And so you gather and pray. You're kind of right there at the police line.
Yep.
What happens at that point?
So we're huddled in prayer, and we're face to face, and we have our hands like this because it was so much noise, like I say, that you couldn't hear one another. I mean, right next to each other, you'd have to scream at each other to be able to hear. And, the police were still launching tear gas out to the northwest and flashbang grenades. And so every once in a while, you'd have tear gas waft past you because it was very windy that day. It was very cold that day. There were people up on the media review stand, and they were launching flashbang grenades over onto the review stand too. I guess trying to get people off of it. I don't know. And anyway, we started to pray, and I really don't know how long we were in prayer. Maybe 10, 15 minutes. I'm not sure. And we have all this on video, by the way. But as we're praying, I feel a strike on my back. And my back was to the police line. I feel a strike on my back, and then I hear Jalise scream out. And as we turned around to see what's going on, the police reached out and grabbed her, and they were striking her and me with clubs. And
just out of nowhere.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Totally. I mean, we were in prayer. We were huddled in prayer. So, we had no idea what was going on around us. What we know now from the videos is the crowd was pushing us into the barricades and kept pushing us closer, because we started out about 5 feet away from the barricades or so. And the crowd would kind of push us a little closer. One guy came up and hugged us while we were in prayer and kind of repositioned us a little bit. And again, we never broke prayer. We never broke that, holding our hands like that. And so we'd got all the way up within a few inches of the barricade, and then the police, Daniel Thal, actually, DC Metro Police, came running from the back there at the Capitol. He was up against the Capitol, came running in, slammed into the back of the police that were there on the line screaming, "Push, push, push." That pushed the barricades into us, and that's when the cops attacked us.
Wow.
And so anyway, go ahead.
Well, looking at I want to get into the details and everything right there. I mean, part of the charges against you was you assaulting the police officers.
Yep.
2 accounts of assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers, civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, and all these are felony offenses. And then you had a range of misdemeanor offenses on top of that.
Yep.
So is your testimony that you were actually attacked and forced into the police barricade rather than the other way around, rather than you advancing and attacking the police officers?
Yes.
We actually have the videos. There were 9 body cams that showed that, along with an aerial video of a leftist reporter that was up in the media tower and conveniently placed that camera directly on us as if he was waiting on it. I don't know. It might be conspiracy theory. I don't know. But it's like he knew that was about to happen. And he sat there and watched the whole thing. So we have not only an aerial view to show what happened, but we have 9 body cams showing what haped. And we love sharing it. Now, we can't legally share the body cams because, of course, they classify those. But that aerial video, we show it often to show people that indeed this was an assault from the police, because our brains don't want to believe that. Most of us law-abiding citizens that, love America, love police, we're grateful for them. We were very upset at the idea of defunding them, and then here they are assaulting us at a rally.
And there's something else you got to keep in mind is the D.C. Metro Police Department is one of the most corrupt, violent police departments in the entire nation. And they have a long, long history of randomly attacking people during events similar to this. And even the police officers that are all involved in us, they were all D.C. Metro that attacked us. All of them have been brought up on charges of violence and even had the department sued at times for their behaviors.
From 2017.
Yeah.
There's been nothing that I'm aware for this rally, except there has been a class action lawsuit filed against those police officers.
Okay. Let me read you the report from the court, and then I'd love to get your response from it. It says, according to trial evidence and police body-worn camera footage, as the officers struggled with the group of rioters, a male individual, later identified as Mark Middleton, pushed against the barricades in the police line with his body. Officers are heard on body-worn camera footage repeatedly ordering Mark Middleton and others to get back. In response, Mark Middleton is heard yelling "F you" as he continued to push against the police barricades. Evidence showed that Mark Middleton resisted MPD officers, grabbed onto an MPD officer's left hand or wrist, and pulled the officer forward towards the crowd. Then, just a short paragraph here, it says, at the same time, a female individual, later identified as Jalise Middleton, is seen on body-worn camera footage repeatedly grabbing and striking the same officer over the barricade with her hand. Another officer then approached to assist, and Jalise Middleton struck the officer as well. Video footage shows that the couple continued to grapple with and strike the officers in an attempt to pull an officer into the crowd as various flags were jabbed toward the officers' faces.
Yeah, so, okay. One thing you have to understand is the first one to the media with a story usually is considered right, rather they're wrong or right. And number two, the federal government knows that 99% or 99.999% of Americans are too lazy to actually go search the evidence and see for themselves. So actually all of our videos are on stophate.com. Okay. Even the aerial video, everything is on Stop Hate. When you review those videos in slow motion, in stop frame basically, you see Daniel Thal running up. You see us away from the barricade because we're actually kind of rocking back and forth a little bit. If we were pushing on the barricade, we wouldn't have been able to rock in a fluid motion like that. And then you jump to Daniel Thal's body cams where he runs up and slams into the Capitol Police as Metro Police are positioning themselves in our area. And on some other body cams and the aerial, you actually see the barricade, the top of the barricade leaned in towards me and her, not the bottom of it, and not leaned towards the cops. It was leaned towards us, indicating the cops were pushing on the barricade at that point, pushing it into us. And you see me braced, trying not to fall down because I'm getting pushed by the crowd. I didn't know how many people at the time. Now we know it was 2 guys. One guy we call Goon. He's about, 6'3", 6'4", probably nearly 300 pounds. And he's got a hand leaning on my back or on my shoulder, pushing me into the police. And there's another guy that's pushing Jalise from the back into the cops. All this happened simultaneously. And I didn't know if it was one person pushing each of us or 5,000 people pushing us because it was packed.
And I still had this scarf wrapped around my head. So all I know is when my hand gets struck, I pull out of the prayer and I look at the police line and he starts trying to grab me. And when I do, I start slapping back at him. Now, this was interesting during the trial because this, 6'2", 200-something pound man, his testimony before seeing the video was that I punched him in the face and it hurt. And,
it hurt really bad.
And lo and behold, the defense attorney showed these videos and kept asking in slow, frame by frame, does she have a fist? Is she hitting you in the face? Are you holding her scarf? Because while I was slapping at them, they're choking me out with this scarf. That's what the big deal was, is because I had it double wrapped around my head. Now it has pulled down from them pulling it tight, and it's around my neck. So I can't pull to get away from them, and I don't want to get pulled over the police line. They're actually trying to get me over the line. And the only thing that saved me was Mark was trying to grab me to get me out of their grips. He's trying to grab the officer's hand and pull it off of my scarf and my, they had my jacket like twisted around too. And anyway, he's wrestling with them to make them let go of me. And the crowd from behind grabs me and rips me back. And I mean like a rag doll. I'd never thought about how many of them it would take to do that, but come to find out, a bunch of them had a hold on me.
So what you also see on the body cam videos and that overhead video tells a lot, even though there's some edited out of it that we don't have. What that shows is neither one of us ever were closed hands. Neither one of us ever struck a cop in an offensive motion. My contact with police officers that I initiated was trying to pull their arms or hands away from my wife. Never did strike a cop. She never struck one.
And we found out through all that body cam footage on Mark saying F you to the police. We were like, that is so out of character for him. What is the deal? What is the deal? So we were excited to get the body cams to see what happened. And that's when Daniel Thaw first struck him.
Initially struck
Three
me.
strikes struck him with a
baton.
With a baton. And mind you, this is striking about the head and shoulders,
which is considered lethal force.
And we definitely did not do anything that was of lethal force. And interesting, in the testimony too, another officer admitted that, the reason they're so concerned about the protesters pushing on the barricades was because it was deadly force to the police. It could seriously injure them. So then they showed the video and showed the barricades getting pushed into us and how they were leaning toward us, not leaning toward police. And so our attorney said, so would you still consider this deadly force when y'all are pushing it into them? And he said yes. He admitted to it.
And they pulled, my scarf was only draped around my shoulders, so they actually pulled my scarf off of me. But they had, Ricky Chasen actually had a grasp of her scarf so tight and around her neck, it was choking her by this point. And the whole time in the trial, even though you can see the scarf pulled taut, it was in his hand. You can see the tassels below his hand right here. He kept denying probably 20 times in the trial that, I'm not grasping her scarf. I'm not grasping her scarf. I'm not trying to pull her over the barricades. I don't have a hold of her scarf. And even the FBI agent, our lead agent, claimed the same thing. Oh, no, he's not holding that scarf. No way. Even though when the crowd finally pulls us back and the scarf gets ripped out of his hand, you can see the top of the scarf go flapping up in the air, as it goes loose.
And my head whipped back.
Her head snaps back.
Wow.
But that's when they pepper sprayed me
Yes.
was when they had me held down with the scarf.
And the claim about pulling the police over the barricade or through the barricade, you can actually see them as the crowd pulled us away. Then after we're exited a few feet back and the crowd is pushing us, they kind of enveloped us. And you can see the police break their own barricade. Ricky Chasen run through. He's a Metro police officer.
Oh, that was
Torin.
quit giving out names.
He runs through the broke open section, swinging his club, hitting people with his club.
But the point is that they were putting so much pressure on that barricade that when we got pulled back, they broke their own police line.
Okay.
Of course, the government's going to twist it in their favor.
The person that you said made the initial rush to the police barricade, what was his name again?
Daniel Thal. So
Dan-
his
THAU.
Okay.
entire body cam, his 2 hours of body cam has actually been on Rumble for over a year and a half. Somebody released it, but you can see this guy absolutely going berserk all day long. I mean, he is one of the worst offenders the entire day.
Well, are you saying that he was on the crowd side and he rushed?
No. He was on the police line side.
Okay.
He's a DC Metro cop.
Okay.
Yeah.
No-
Something had triggered him. He got way out of control.
Talk to me about, so all of this, at what point does it escalate any more beyond that initial incident?
So when the crowd pulled us away, she's blind in one eye also. So she's got a lot of physical issues, which is another part that makes us laugh about her punching a cop, and it hurts so bad, especially a guy that size. But anyway, we couldn't see. I mean, we were totally blinded from the pepper spray, and the crowd led us quite a ways away. We were still on the west side of the Capitol, but they led us down to some retaining wall. I don't know how far away. People giving us water to wash our eyes out and Visine and that sort of thing. And it took, now we know, about 30 minutes for her to be able to see well enough to go back to the hotel room. And we looked back at the Capitol. This is the first time either one of us have been able to look back at the Capitol. And that's when everybody had breached the barricades, and they were all up on the balconies and stuff around the Capitol on the west side. And we made a very unfortunate Facebook post where we, actually, I think it was me, or maybe it was both of us, I don't remember. We're claiming that we fought the cops, we broke through the barricades, we got in the Capitol. At this time, we had no idea no one had went in the Capitol. And we didn't fight the cops. We didn't break through the barricades. We were speaking in
For patriots in general.
macro terms, not micro. And
Not to mention, as social media posts, and this is what I testified to on the stand, you're kind of creating clickbait. You wanted people to start asking the questions, and then you would tell the details, but you wouldn't go into for a post, you wouldn't go into a 20-minute, explanation of all the details. You just wanted to get this message out and tell people what's going on and get them to ask questions.
Yeah.
And because our Facebook came into the trial, and so we believe that's what we got convicted on, is our words on Facebook, because so warn your listeners that they're considering that under oath of what you're speaking to. And so anyway, that got used against us, and I clearly spoke on the stand and said that, we put that up there for the dramatic effect, for the kind of clickbait, and I flat out exaggerated and lied. If you want to call an exaggeration a lie, and it is, then I own it. I said it's social media. I didn't realize I had to know my weight by the exact pound and my height and not lie about it. Like, I don't know who is not exaggerated on Facebook. But that is exactly what got used against us. They were allowed to weigh all the evidence as they saw fit. So even though there's video that totally contradicted everything we said on Facebook, it was irrelevant to
And even the social media posts where she made a claim like that, or I made a claim like that, or a text message or something, and then the conversation developed, us fully explaining what happened, that part wasn't allowed in the evidence. The jury wasn't allowed to see that. They were only allowed to see the clickbait side of it and not the full story. And so, yeah, we were convicted on the Facebook comments that we made, not on the actual evidence.
And here with Mark and Jalise Middleton. Guys, tell me about April 21st, 2021, when you were arrested.
Oh, yeah, yesterday was a 3-year anniversary. So we live on a farm up in North Texas. And that morning as I left to go to work at about 8 a.m., I had a company car. I was a marketer also. When I pulled off of the farm, a MRAP, which is a armored assault vehicle, basically, come rolling down the gravel road towards me. And, in my naivety, I thought, that's weird. And then 2 black Suburbans popped out behind it, a bunch of guys hanging out of those with automatic weapons pointing at me. And I thought, that's really weird. I looked in my rearview mirror, and here comes 2 more black Suburbans the same way. So like any rational individual, I stopped and began complying with everything they were asking. They're screaming at me to get out of the car. And I got out of the car, and I'm walking towards the 2 agents calling me to them, and had my hands up the whole 9 yards. And from the MRAP, they throw a flashbang grenade right behind me. And I stop, and I look back at the flashbang grenade, and I go, seriously? And I proceeded on to the 2 agents, and as I'm going, I said, why did they do that? And he looked at me and said, because Washington told us to do it this way. And as they're arresting me, they said, you know why we're arresting you? And I said, no. And he said, for your involvement January 6th. And I started laughing, and I said, why didn't y'all just call us to come down to y'all's office, wherever it was? At the time, I didn't know it was Plano, Texas, but I do now. And he said sheepishly, Washington told us to do it this way.
Bad.
And they asked where my wife was, and I said, she's still at home getting ready, and, please call her before you raid the house, because she does carry every morning. I don't want my wife killed. I don't want her beat up. I don't want my door busted up in my house, and I don't want my dog shot. And so anyway, while they're putting me in the car, they refused to show me a warrant. Apparently, we found out that the federal government does not have to produce a warrant. In fact, they really don't even have to have a warrant to start out with. They can get the warrant and a search warrant and everything else after the fact.
Now they can assault you anytime they want.
Yep.
Jalise, did you get a phone call from them? Did they warn you before coming to the house?
They did. They gave me a call, and even that was interesting in the way they worded it, because you would think they would say something like, this is FBI starting out. But the first words were, we have your husband. This is the FBI. You need to come out with your hands up. So I'm almost thinking I'm getting punked. I'm not sure what to think. I'm like, has someone kidnapped my husband? I'm kind of pacing back and forth in the bathroom like, do I need to get my gun? Do I need to go fight? What do I need to do? And as I walked around the bathroom with the phone to my ear, I looked over, and my gun was right there on the corner of my dresser, and I already had my holster on. And I don't know if I looked over at it or I grabbed it, but whatever one I did, that person that called me, she knew, because she told me so sternly, do not touch that gun. Come out with your hands up now. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is no joke. So I come out of the bedroom, and my entire yard, I can see through my living room windows, it's absolutely chock full of SWAT team and federal agents. And when I get to the door, they've got a tank parked on my handicap ramp. He calls it an MRAP. It's got the turret with a little man with a gun. It's a tank. So anyway, it had a battering ram on it. I had to sway around the battering ram to go down my own handicap ramp. And when I get down there, I hand on my phone right away. So they had that. They flew a drone past my head when I opened the front door. So now they're in my house searching it with no search warrant. So I come down the ramp, and I'm upset.
The drone is in your house?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, they brought that drone straight into my house. And so they seat me at the bumper of a SWAT truck, and then they brought my renter out of the rent house next door at gunpoint and sat her on the SWAT truck bumper also. And I started asking for the search warrant. They claimed they didn't have to give it to me. And I demanded it more. And anyway, he held it up, but he was like 6 feet away. He stepped like 3 feet closer. It still wasn't enough. He even sent an agent in to get my glasses, but still wouldn't let me hold it. But at that point, I could tell it was for our property. I could see our house numbers. So anyway, he then walked over and started showing me pictures like from the body-worn camera that they photocopied.
Very grainy,
very grainy.
Black and white.
Asked me if that was my hand, if that was my wedding ring, and I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, you can either take us to it or we'll tear up your house finding it. It's your choice. And I said, well, I don't have anything to hide. I'll take you to it. I had no idea that they were going to bring all these lies to the table. I had no idea. I mean, I knew there was interaction with police, so I knew the potential was there, but I thought this will get cleared up as soon as they see those body cams. And so I was mad at him for acting a fool, coming to my house like that, but I was also humored by it, still thinking, oh my gosh, what a story to tell my grandkids,
How bizarre this whole thing is, exactly. Now, after the arrest, have you guys spent any jail time currently?
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a night in jail down in McKinney, Texas, and so we only spent one night. We were put on the medical isolation ward, both of us. They were still doing COVID protocols,
but separate. We figured out later we were together.
Yeah, we were not far from each other, but we had no clue where each other was.
Right.
The next day, they take us to Plano and arraign us at the federal courthouse there. That's when we find out all the charges against us. At the time, we only had 6 charges. And
as we wouldn't shut up and we wouldn't take plea bargains, they started
adding more and more.
Right.
So that's what they do. Is a punishment for not taking their plea deals and giving them an easy win. So, we spent the next 3 years, when we got out of jail the next morning, our daughter came and picked us up. And the comical part about that is our kids are all grown, but as they were teenagers and they started to drive, we gave them the standard parent talk that if you ever get thrown in jail for being ignorant, don't call us. We're not coming to get you. And so when my daughter and son-in-law showed up, and we start walking up to the truck, the door flings open, and our daughter looks out, and she goes, well, what do we have here? Our kids have never let us down from that.
No, I bet. I bet.
So, I mean, and me and Jalise had never, ever had any kind of run-in with the police. We had no speeding tickets on our records, anything. I mean, truly the model all-American couple right here.
And it's really, honestly, that's part of the American tragedy, because we don't know the judicial system. We don't know the legal system. We don't understand what to do, not to do, how to fight back, how to, navigate nothing. I mean, you truly immediately fall victim to your own country.
Right.
And come to find out, the only search warrant they had that day was a search warrant to retrieve our phones. And they could search anything they wanted to the extent of receiving our phones. Well, they both received our phones outside of the house. They did not have a search warrant for our dangerous Trump gear that they confiscated. They did not have a search warrant for her wedding ring. They did not have a search warrant for our coats that they took. The only thing they had a search warrant for was our phones, but yet they're not going to show you that because they don't have to, and they want you to give them consent to search your home. So as a lesson for everybody out there, if you get visited by a federal agent
and they talk, they're lying.
They're lying, and do not give them permission to come in your house under any circumstances. Talk to them through the door. And if they don't have a search warrant to search your home and they don't give it to you, shut the door and call the local sheriff and say that there are men at my front porch with guns
That's what
and
you would
have
do
us
if
here.
you have to do it all over again, huh?
Yes, and that's what everyone needs to know.
Yeah.
They don't have a warrant. Call the police. Say there's men on my front porch with guns.
You now are looking at sentencing
Yes.
coming up in May. And so you have been declared guilty.
Yep.
Yes.
Felons. And now you're looking at sentencing coming up on May 24th, I believe is the date.
Correct.
Any idea what this is going to look like for you in the future?
No, we know while we were still in trial after we were found guilty, the government recommended 5 to 9 years. And we found out yesterday that the government probation office, their recommendation is, I think, 42 months or 40?
Yeah, something.
Something like 42 months is what they're recommending. We don't know. The judge may give us the 9 to 10 years. He may give us 4. He may give us less. We don't know. Or something wildly in between. We have no clue.
How are you guys?
We really don't.
How are you guys
What?
preparing for the Senate? How are you preparing?
Well, so I will answer that because one of us isn't preparing. So
We both are.
we both are. But anyway, we have found somebody to maintain our property. They're going to live in the home and help keep up the taxes because we live on family land, 4-generation family land. So they're going to maintain that and help take care of my renter because she's a widow, and we've always, kept things very, very manageable for her so that she could afford to live independent. And so they're going to help, maintain the property and the home. And then we're packing up our house so that they can move into the home. We are, I guess, staying very, very deep in the Word to remind us that this is a calling, that just like if He were to send us to a mission trip in a foreign country, this is the mission field He's sending us to, is to prison, to do the will of the Lord there. We feel confident He's going to equip us for whatever that we're called to. And He has done that thus far, every inch of the way. So we work very hard to definitely stay deep in the Word. We have wonderful donors and need more that are willing to keep up our commissary, and that way we can be as comfortable as possible in prison. And other than that, it's more of just emotional preparation to not let the enemy get a foothold.
God. Wow. Tell you, it's heavy, and
Oh, did you freeze?
It's unfortunate that we're talking about America. We're not talking about China.
I think you froze.
I just had an interruption there in the signal. I was saying that it's unfortunate that we're talking about America and we're not talking about China. We're not talking about Russia. This is happening in America.
Well, and one good thing that we've discovered, we were actually tipped off anonymously a couple of weeks ago, and then we were, had an anonymous phone call. I'll leave it as anonymous. Monday, and then last Monday, and then this week had a conference with our lawyers yesterday. The DOJ. What?
So careful.
The DOJ withheld some evidence from us that is very beneficial to us, a Brady violation. And so our lawyers are crafting some motions to deal with that. And, so we caught them lying. Basically, they knew some evidence, and they didn't release it until well after our trial, about a month and a half after. And it could have very well been the key to exonerate us through all of it.
Wow.
But the jury obviously didn't get to hear it. And,
And it doesn't matter, to be perfectly honest, because what I have seen in the 3 years of following these cases, which is why we chose to go with public defenders, we did have hired attorneys, is nobody's getting out without the prison time. when you got a $50 ticket misdemeanor and you're serving time in prison, nobody's getting out unscathed. They're out to victimize us. We know we're not getting fair trials. I believe the decision was made before we walked in because the evidence was astoundingly clear, and yet we were convicted on all charges anyway. Another charge that we have was a 1512, which is before the Supreme Court, 18 U.S.C. 1512, which was the paper shredding charge of Enron. And they have manipulated that to try to make it a viable charge for J6ers for interrupting Congress. But that charge was actually to protect evidence. Now they're trying to switch it to make it look like it's to protect Congress. And it is before the Supreme Court. Conveniently, they have held our sentencing date before that comes down, a decision comes down from the Supreme Court. So
another thing we're charged with is one of the 1752 charges is interstate commerce violation. So it is a misdemeanor, and what happened is when the mayor of D.C. issued the lockdown order at 3 p.m. to take effect at 6 p.m., a Safeway in the city had to shut down at 6 p.m. that normally closes at 9 p.m. And part of what they're using against every one of us J6ers is the loss of business that Safeway suffered between 6 and 9 p.m., which then affected the distribution center of Safeway that is in Virginia because they shipped less stuff to them the next day. And so that therefore constituted a violation of interstate commerce. But during our trial, of course, the pro-Palestinian protesters can literally shut down the entire bridge over the Mississippi River there in Memphis, going in between Memphis and Arkansas. That's okay. Nobody got charged for 1752 violations there.
Yeah. So in the years since January 6th, 2021, more than 1,313
almost 1,400
individuals have been charged, and this is in almost every state in the union. And these are crimes related, of course, to breach of the Capitol. But like you're saying, they're looking for a connection with anything they can find. Interstate commerce violations. It's absurd and bizarre. And so, my heart breaks for you guys, but I'm so encouraged as well for your faith. I'm encouraged to see your strength as you're looking at potential prison time for standing for your country, for standing for your president and freedom. And I just pray for justice. What hope do you have? Are you looking at all at the presidential election and putting any hope in the possibility of Trump being elected and possibly pardoning you?
I gotta jump in because this is my little hot spot. So they stole an election in 2020. They did it in broad daylight. They've shown you evidence for 4 years that it has been stolen. They have attacked anybody that says the election has been stolen. And somewhere in America's mind, they're sitting back thinking they're going to have an election in November.
They could just vote harder this time.
Yep.
And I just wonder, when you have that kind of faith, why every single person in America is not a born-again believer. That's just some ridiculous thinking right there. But I am a faith-filled person, so what I will tell you is I don't believe there will be a fair election, but I do believe President Trump is coming back into office. Now, how that's going to happen, I don't know, but it won't be by a fair election, I can assure you.
At this point, Trump is the only viable option to pardon all of us J6ers and to expunge our records. If you look at the J6ers, the vast majority of them, what you're going to find are Christians. The vast majority are your 40 plus. A huge percentage is 50 plus. I mean, they just convicted a 73-year-old grandmother the other day because she went into the Capitol for a few minutes and turned around and walked out and had no interaction with the police whatsoever. She's going to end up going to prison for that. Really?
And I want to point out with our military veterans, so the general population has 7% military veteran in it. However, 26% J6ers are military veteran in prison. This is an assault on our country. People, we are at war. It is a spiritual war, but we are at war. The enemy is winning hands down because our country will not go to its knees and pray and repent and turn their eyes back toward God, where he promises to restore our nation. So my plea is for that. As far as hope, my hope isn't in a single man. It is in my Lord. I know that he will make it good no matter what. I don't like the idea of going to prison. Even the one day I spent there was way too much. It was devastating. But I do believe that not one tear, not one drop of blood will be shed that he will not make them account for.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And I would love to talk about what we've done since. We have started a wonderful nonprofit called American Patriot Relief. You can find it at AmericanPatriotRelief.org. And what this nonprofit is something God put on mine and her heart right after we got out, 3 years ago. But we support January 6th defendants in their daily life needs. We do not do legal fees because that's just throwing money in the trash at this point. But what we do is we buy food for them. We fix their cars. We pull their houses out of foreclosure. We support the moms that are now single because their husband's been sitting in prison for 2.5, 3 years. Who's taking care of those kids that he's leaving behind?
Bad.
We have a 833 saved J6 hotline where any J6er or their family can call for just emotional support, financial support, whatever they need. If they, we turn them on to other organizations that, if we can't help them. And then we have an adopted J6er program. This is where you can get on our website and find a J6er, one in Oklahoma, or Texas, or wherever. Maybe that you find a name that is similar to one of your children's names, or Uncle Bob's name, or whatever. You can adopt that specific J6er for any amount that you see fit.
Wow.
The only thing we do on that or remind people is that Western Union charges us $8.95. So whatever amount you get, we're going to add $8.95. So if you commit to $20, it's going to be $28.95. If you commit to $100, it'll be $108.95.
But the uniqueness about that program is it goes straight to the defendant that you adopt.
Yep.
And so you can actually take responsibility to pray over them, provide for them, write letters to them, and really make it your investment in this movement.
Such a good. What is the name of the website one more time?
AmericanPatriotRelief.org.
AmericanPatriotRelief.org.
On our website also are some really cool T-shirts to support January 6th. So we call this one the Insurrection shirt. This is the J6 Witness shirt.
I love it. Wow. Okay. Mark and Jalise, I'm out of time, but I could sit here another hour with you guys. I'm very encouraged, frustrated, angry, but encouraged, and we will be jumping on board to send some relief to you and some of the other J6 defendants. But God bless you guys. I want to stay in touch with you to track with you through this process, and we're going to broadcast this as far and wide as we can so people can get your story and understand what really happened on January 6th. And
thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate your time today.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you guys.